Now, the deal to sell 51% of the South African Airways shares to the Takatso Consortium has been terminated, and the airline will go back to being 100% state-owned. Now, this was announced by Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan yesterday during a media briefing. Gordhan stated that the revised transaction structure had to take into account the public interest and a fair market price, which they could not agree on. So to talk to us more on this and, of course, reaction to this announcement, we joined virtually by Advocate Christopher Shabangu, who's the president of the SA Cabin Crew and Alliances Union. Advocate Shabangu, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live. Right, Advocate Shabangu, if you could perhaps just unmute yourself for us there.
Sorry about that. I'll say good morning to you, Sakina, and good morning to your viewers.
Thanks so much for your time. So, Advocate, first off, for your members, what has the reaction been to the latest news regarding the Takatso Consortium and SAA?
First of all, I just have, Sakina, I have to congratulate the South African Cabin Crew, the then South African Cabin Crew Association, which is South African Cabin Crew and Alliances now, and NUMSA, for that resilient fight that we put on against the minister, Pravin Gordhan. And secondly, to tell you that we are so grateful, thankful to God that the minister is leaving very soon. Hopefully in the next 2 months he's leaving. However, when it comes to the reaction on the issue of the Takatso deal, remember, we've been saying so long, for so many times, we've been coming to the studios and saying for so long that that deal is dodgy and was dodgy from the beginning. So as it stands right now, we've been proven correct, actually. So we are very happy that this is happening. Not necessarily happy because there is no strategic partner, but we are happy that it is not this particular strategic partner, which is Takatso, because it had no money to run the airline. So for the workers, this is good news.
So perhaps just as a reminder, if we could just go back a little on this deal, and you refer to it as being dodgy. What were your reservations, first off, about this deal?
Look, from the start, we've been saying that the strategic partner of SAA at the time, particularly when SAA was seriously struggling, you needed to have partners that were experienced in running the airline, and they were there. People that would take the airline to another level. When we say another level, we're talking about an airline that is in the southernmost of the country, of the continent. We are in the southern hemisphere of the continent and the southern part of the hemisphere. And you need an airline that could have had, so there's so many things that could have been done. An airline that could connect in the middle of Africa, whether in Kenya, whether in Ethiopia. Ethiopian Airlines was willing to invest in South African Airways, but they were overlooked. Kenyan Airways, for whatever reason, they could have been partnered with, and they were willing to be partnered with. Again, they were ignored. Lufthansa, which is a giant in Europe and in the world for that matter, actually had an interest. So there were about 5 companies who are experienced that were willing to partner with South African Airways. And unfortunately, those were overlooked by the minister. Even though we raised it ourselves, I was in that meeting when we raised these things. I was in that meeting, we sat with the minister and the DPE and said, Minister, look at these people, look at these companies. We have spoken to these companies. And I must tell you, Sakina, the saddest part about this thing is that the minister didn't really have to do so much of work, because the then CEO, Mr. Jahana, had already done the groundwork with regards to some partnerships, like your Ethiopian partnerships. But then he goes and chooses a company that was supposed to be from a consortium that was just going to be formed for the purpose of fulfilling his wishes, whatever those wishes were. And obviously, we now know that those wishes or those plans that the minister had were malicious. So it was dubious in that sense, because we didn't just ask him. NUMSA and SACA didn't just ask them to please look at. We brought even those potential partners to the minister, and they were overlooked. And I would even invite you to listen to Takatso, the DG, which I believe is still the DG, because his case is still going on. The DG of the DPE, then you'll understand what kind of a person the minister is and was as he's living now. And the fact that he actually, put 5,000 jobs in one company, 5,000 jobs, people lost their jobs there. And imagine other state-owned companies that he actually killed. He's a one lucky man, Sakina, that he hasn't been held accountable.
So in terms of accountability, this deal is now off the table. So do you believe that there should still be further accountability on the part of the minister and whoever else may have played a part in what took place?
Sakina, the minister has got a lot to answer to. Not just on SAA and this Takatso deal. On the Takatso deal, I mean, there's just, I'm not a politician, but I'm just going to ask, how is it possible? How is it even possible that the minister refuses to disclose to Parliament or to even his own party, the ANC, the details of the deal? Right now, he's able to come to me and you, Sakina, and other South Africans, as if we don't have brains, to come and say, in a space of a week, to come and say, no, the airline is now functioning properly. So the value of the airline has actually increased, grown. So therefore, there has to be a new evaluation of what it is worth. Well, a week later, they say they can't agree on a price. I mean, that's something that you're even reporting on today. We can't agree on it. When were the evaluations done? What did you evaluate? Did you evaluate the land that the airline owns? Did you evaluate the aircraft, the leases that it has? What did you evaluate? Nothing was. It's just something that is just trumped up, and we must keep quiet. And I am then saying to you, there's actually a lot more that the minister has to answer to, particularly when it comes to such matters. And ESCOM and Denel, the greatest manufacturer of arms in our country, and actually in the world, competent in the world, reduced to nothing by the same minister ever since he took over. And nothing, no accountability, not one day. So today we feel so vindicated that, as a South African cabin crew, and in this case I must mention them, of course, because they were part of this with us. And I know they're going to speak for themselves, but we feel so vindicated that we fought, and it is our belief that he is leaving because of the pressure that we actually put him under.
So the minister has said that SAA will be able to sustain itself for at least the next 18 months, and that jobs are secured for that period. Are you confident about this, and what do you expect to happen in the months to come?
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. So let's just be straightforward. South African, an airline like South African Airways is a national carrier, meaning it's an airline that was never meant to make profit. Is it a good concept? It's a beautiful concept. It is an airline that was not meant to make any profit. It's an airline that is supposed to actually create jobs for people and be able to sustain itself. What we're then saying is that the government shouldn't be ashamed to actually bail out South African Airways when SAA is doing its best to run, not when it's corrupt, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just simply trying to say, good, if the SAA is, as it's trying to do now, to come back to its former glory, it should be assisted to get to where it was before. We shouldn't be shy as government to be able to do that because it's creating jobs. And on top of that, there are other spin-offs that come from this airline flying. There are other spin-offs that where the economy is actually gaining out of this. So as to whether it's going to be flying in the next, let's just say 2 years, our view as SACA, I can tell you now, is that we still believe that it needs to be assisted. We seriously believe it needs to. About how much it needs to be assisted, we don't know. But it is important that we say that it shouldn't be based, the hub or any kind of bailout that may come shouldn't come to help any kind of corruption with South Africans, because it is important that we keep the jobs of the employees at SAA. It is also important that we create more jobs at SAA. Recently, the saddest thing that I saw advertised by South African Airways recently was that, they're going to be hiring outside people because there's some kind of skills loss, a skills loss that is happening in the airline, which shouldn't be. We are a capable country in developing engineers. Actually, companies like SAA are supposed to train engineers, pilots, a cabin crew, other professions that can actually be exported to other airlines within the country, because the airline industry is growing in the country and people need jobs, and SAA is the hub where other airlines can actually come and take skills that are already developed. So in our view, yes, in the next coming 2 years, SAA has a future, but we shouldn't be shy to help it if it needs help.
The country at large would be looking at SAA and saying, given how much money has been lost, given the amount of bailouts that this entity has enjoyed, there's a school of thought that this is a vanity project for government, and we can no longer afford to be throwing the sort of good money after bad, where money is mismanaged and the entity is mismanaged overall. How do you convince South Africans that the fiscus should continue to support SAA, and or should we continue looking for a private equity partner, stakeholder, that could take over most of the financial burden?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, I completely agree with you. First of all, South Africans that think that way, they're absolutely correct, because money has been mismanaged over the years. We're not oblivious to that fact. It's a fact that money has been, there's been bad management over the years. People, it was a free for all, basically. So what we're then saying is that, as I said earlier, if ever the company would need help, it should be based on the fact that they're competent to get that help, because as they move forward, they would have that problem, as you suggest right now, which we obviously agree, they would have a strategic partner that understands how the business works, and they've got a plan as to how to grow the airline. And if then they meet any other problem, then the government will be at ease to come and pump in money to assist the airline. And I can assure you right now, Sakina, if we have the right partnership, or if SAA has the right partnership, a strategic partner, there would be no need for bailouts. I can assure you, this is the most popular airline in the world, with greatest opportunities within the continent of Africa. Before you even look at international destinations within the continent of Africa, we have the greatest. As I speak to you now, just as a measure of interest, as a center, at the bottom of Africa, which is one of the countries that are most visited, you have Zimbabwe being next to South Africa, most visited, and there is no access from Kenya to Zimbabwe. There's no access from Nigeria to Zimbabwe directly. And all of there's just so much that can be done. There's no access, as we speak today, there's very little access from Zimbabwe to Egypt. So what I'm trying to say, South African Airways has got this hub that can be used with. So yes, there's so much potential for this airline.
Of course, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the next few days, months and years. Advocate Christopher Shabangu, thanks for your time. President of the SA Cabin Crew and Alliances Union, talking to us about the latest regarding the termination of the deal between Takatso Consortium and SAA.